Welcome to Trench Tactics, my series where I aim to provide a breakdown of factions, sub-factions and strategies for the game of Trench Crusade. Today we'll be taking a look at every Cult of the Black Grail model, discuss how to field them, and take a look at a couple of possible lists. The Cult of the Black Grail is a close-range faction with some premium melee options. They are in close contest with Trench Pilgrims for being the most powerful warband in close range and melee, featuring the single most powerful melee elite, the Lord of Tumours. Their other main elite option, the Plague Knights, are some of the most flexible and customizable models in the game in terms of their possible builds, when accounting for their knightly ranks. The Black Grail also benefits from unique access to a more powerful form of blood markers in the form of infection markers. Many of their weapons and abilities inflict these, and they are a strict upgrade over regular blood markers, which can generate massive value when used strategically. More on them shortly. Surprisingly, many models in the faction are very fast, subverting the trope of a slow, shambling army of infected zombies. Heralds and Hounds are some of the most mobile models in the game, making them perfect for flanking and objective play. They do still of course have their slow, zombie-like chaff models, but their speedier allies more than make up for this. Taking a closer look at their unique mechanics, the infection markers I mentioned before proliferate as the disease festers. This means if a model starts its turn with an infection marker, it gains one more before taking any actions. Other than this, they serve mostly like regular blood markers, except they're harder to get rid of, with very few options existing to remove them. They can be used to modify dice rolls and trigger bloodbath exactly like blood markers, and they can actually be combined with blood markers in order to trigger a bloodbath. An additional ability Black Grail boasts is to cause enemy warbands to take morale tests with -1 dice. This means you get more value out of taking enemy models out of combat, and especially from removing enemy leaders. It's feasible to take them down from their usual +1 dice morale check to a -1 dice check instead. Unfortunately for the Grail, other Black Grail and Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent warbands are not afraid of the freaky zombie boys and ignore this effect entirely. Lastly, I'll touch on a common ability across Black Grail models, which is Undead Fortitude. This ability means non-fire injuries rolled against these models are made with -1 dice. On top of this, every model in their roster has Negate Gas, meaning no extra blood markers are caused by the gas keyword. This results in around a 25% survivability buff, even without taking gas into account. This serves to make the Black Grail a relatively tanky faction, as long as you aren't being countered with flamethrower spam. Considering much of the roster is also unable to take armor, it is a very core part of their kit and their playstyle. We start off our roster review with one of the best melee models in the game, the Lord of Tumours. 130 ducat space, it has 6-inch movement, +4 dice in melee, and +1 dice at range. It has the keywords Negate Gas, Fear, Strong, Tough, Leader, and Elite. Leader means that while you're on the field and not downed, you roll morale checks with +1 dice. Negate Gas, as we covered, prevents extra blood markers from the gas keyword. Strong allows the model to ignore the heavy keyword, and allows it to wield a single two-handed melee weapon one-handed. Fear causes enemy models to have -1 dice to hit them in melee, and grants the model immunity to fear. Lastly, Tough means the first time an injury roll would take the model out of action, it is treated as a down result instead. The ability, Beelzebub's Touch, means that when the Lord of Tumours inflicts a blood or infection marker, an extra infection marker is afflicted alongside it. Crushing Blows permits the Lord to attack twice, unarmed, if it is not given melee weapons. These attacks are made as if the Lord is armed with trench clubs, and ignore the offhand modifier. The Lord of Tumours also has Undead Fortitude, meaning non-fire injury rolls are made against it with -1 dice, which can be combined with armor to create a truly tanky leader. The Lord of Tumours is the best melee leader in the game, no contest. It is a terrifying melee threat that outperforms every other model in the game if equipped for close quarters combat, even beating out the legendary Praetor more times than not. It will serve as your centerpiece in core Black Grail warbands, and many games will revolve around him, especially early in campaign play. He is rightfully limited to only one per list, and must be taken if no Plague Knights are present in the same list. Now we'll look at a couple of builds for your Lord of Tumours. The first is the general build, the cheaper of the two but still effective as an option at 220 ducats. You bring gas grenades, great hammer, reinforced armor, trench shield, Grail devotee, and a combat helmet. The gas grenades have 8 inches of range, 3 inches of blast, assault, ignore armor, -1 dice to injure, and the gas keyword. Assault means you can use the weapon before charging or after leaving melee combat, while the gas keyword inflicts an extra blood marker. The Great Hammer is a two-handed melee weapon with a +1 injury modifier and heavy. The +1 injury modifier is added as a flat bonus to injuries rather than as extra dice, improving performance against high armor targets. Reinforced armor grants -2 armor, and the Trench Shield grants -1 for a total of -3. The Grail Devotee is a special piece of equipment. You can only equip them to 2 different models, but each of the chosen models can have up to 2 themselves. The first to be equipped on each model costs 15 ducats, but if you want 2 on a single model, the second costs 2 glory instead. They are well worth the cost though, as they grant a stacking +1 injury modifier to all melee attacks. The combat helmet negates shrapnel, which is fairly prevalent as a keyword. The build creates an effective and durable assault combo with a total of +2 flat to injury rolls in melee, killing unarmored models on a roll of at least 7, and even taking models with -3 armor out of action on a roll of at least 10. The second build is the Lord of Infection, a more expensive but very powerful alternative costing 265 ducats to field. Bring a Putrid Shotgun, Beelzebub's Axe, Reinforced Armor, a Black Grail Shield, Grail Devotee, and Compound Eyes Helmet. The Putrid Shotgun has 12 inches of range, +1 dice to hit, assault, shotgun, and causes infection markers. It also has bayonet lug and shield combo, but these are less important to cover. The shotgun keyword means it doesn't suffer -1 dice to hit at long range, rather -1 dice to injure. This is generally fine, as the goal with a shotgun isn't to kill, it is to inflict infection markers, which it does instead of blood. Beelzebub's Axe is a 2-handed heavy melee weapon with an impressive +2 dice to injure that causes infection markers and is limited to 1 per list. This is a premium weapon choice that, when combined with Grail Devotees, can take just about anything out of action. The Black Grail Shield grants -1 armor, and you can make a action roll when the bearer is targeted with a ranged attack. If successful, the attack against them is made with -2 dice to hit, or automatically misses if you roll a critical result. The Compound Eyes Helmet negates shrapnel, but also grants +1 dice to ranged attacks, improving consistency with the assault combo. This build stacks up infection markers quickly, which combos well with Beelzebub's Touch. If you hit with both the shotgun and the axe, which you probably will, at +4 dice to melee and +3 dice to range, you deal 4 infection markers per activation. The second elite for the Black Grail is the Plague Knight, costing 60 ducats and having 6 inches of movement, +2 dice in melee and +0 at range. They come with the keywords Elite, Fear, Negate Gas, and Strong, and have the ability Undead Fortitude. They have a special requirement where they must always be equipped with armor, which isn't much of a drawback as you always want them wearing armor anyway. Their main draw, outside of solid stats and keywords, is their ability to be upgraded with Plague Knight ranks, a selection of buffs and upgrades. Worth noting is that a single Plague Knight cannot take multiple ranks. The first option is Plague Almoner, a 10 ducat upgrade that reduces the cost of bloodbaths by 1 marker. This means they can trigger bloodbath on a standing target with 5 markers, or on a downed target with only 2, which is extremely good. Knight Companion of the Fly is a cheaper 5 ducats, which grants the knight +1 dice to either ranged or melee attacks, which must be chosen when the upgrade is purchased. The ranged upgrade is decent, while the melee upgrade is kind of just unnecessary overkill, which takes up the valuable rank slot. Knight of the Rotten Cross is the last rank for the core Black Grail, costing 5 ducats and being limited to 1. It permits the knight to equip a single weapon from the new Antioch or Heretic Legion armory. This grants access to some very good gear, with standout choices being the anti-material rifle and sacrificial knife. Overall, the Plague Knight is a flexible elite model, with a stat line and keywords to be serious melee threats. Their ability to take armor and shields while having Undead Fortitude also makes them very durable, while knight ranks open up a variety of builds and playstyle options, potentially making them the single most build versatile model in the game. You can take a maximum of 2 in the list, or 3 if you don't bring the Lord of Tumours. Now we have a build for each of their ranks. This is far from an exhaustive list. As mentioned, you can build these knights in any number of ways, but these should serve as decent examples. The melee Plague Almoner is a 185 ducat build that takes the upgrade of its namesake, gas grenades, Beelzebub's Axe, Trench Shield, Reinforced Armor, Grail Devotee, and Compound Eyes Helmet. This build aims to inflict 2 blood markers with gas grenades, enough to enable a bloodbath on downed targets when combined with Plague Almoner. If you can trigger the bloodbath, the Devotee bonus combined with the axe will kill almost anything. If the axe is taken by the Lord of Tumours, which it often will be, you can choose to take a greatsword as a small downgrade. For more aggression, switch the shield for a club or a plague blade to hone in on the infection marker playstyle. The Knight Companion of the Fly build is 147 ducats, taking the rank upgrade, Putrid Shotgun, Plague Blade, Reinforced Armor, Trench Shield and Combat Helmet. This build achieves +2 dice to ranged attacks as well as melee, making for consistent and powerful assault potential with high infection output. Potential changes are switching the shotgun to gas grenades to pivot away from infection, and taking a great hammer for punchier melee potential. The Knight of the Rotten Cross is 168 ducats to build, with the upgrade, gas grenades, sacrificial blade, reinforced armor, trench shield, Grail devotee, and combat helmet. The sacrificial blade is the Rotten Cross choice, a one-handed, risky melee weapon with a +2 injury modifier. When combined with one Grail devotee, this adds up to a +3 modifier total, making for an insane melee threat. If you add the second devotee for 2 glory, you end up with the only possible +4 melee modifier in the game, which is able to punch through just about anything with very good consistency. You can upgrade this build further by switching the Trench Shield for a Black Grail shield, and the Combat Helmet for a Compound Eyes helmet to make the assault combo more consistent. And for the last and most humble of the elites, we have the Corpse Guard. 55 ducats, 6 inches movement, +1 dice in melee and +0 dice at range. They come with the usual Black Grail keywords with Elite, Fear, Negate Gas, and Undead Fortitude. They have a couple of decent abilities, the first of which being Bodyguard. This means if a friendly Black Grail model is within 1 inch of the Corpse Guard and is hit by a ranged or melee attack, the Corpse Guard can take the injury roll instead of the original target. Worth noting is that this cannot be used against attacks that have the Blast keyword. Parasitic Tick means that when the Corpse Guard inflicts a marker on a non-Black Grail model, it can remove 1 blood marker from itself. Considering all of this, the Corpse Guard shapes up to be a cheaper, defensive alternative to the Plague Knight. They generally serve a more defensive role where it is required, or as a less important utility piece. They are rarely taken when a Plague Knight can be taken instead, but it shouldn't be written off entirely. You can take up to 3 of them in a Black Grail list. When it comes to their builds, they can serve in a fair few roles, but there are some common choices. First is the Infectious Bodyguard, coming in at 132 ducats. Take the Putrid Shotgun, Plague Blade, Reinforced Armor, and a Trench Shield. With this setup, they serve as supportive elites intended to take injury rolls for allies with their Bodyguard ability. The Infectious Weapon setup helps spread markers around, debuffing opposing models with recurring markers and allowing harder hitting allies to capitalize. With the intention of having them take injuries for their buddies, the armor investment should prove worth the price. Just be very careful of fire and blast weaponry. Lastly, Parasitic Tick should be remembered as it helps with longevity in melee combat. Next is the Budget Body, a cheaper 93 ducat alternative with shotgun, bayonet, standard armor, and trench shield. The shotgun has 12 inches of range, +1 dice to hit, assault, bayonet lug, shield combo, and shotgun. Bayonets are cheaper trench club equivalents that can be equipped on weapons with the bayonet lug keyword. This is a less costly alternative for when there aren't many ducats to go around, but serves a similar purpose of protecting the Lord of Tumours and Plague Knights. With a shotgun and a bayonet, they are still somewhat consistent at causing at least 2 blood markers per activation, allowing for decent setup potential. The last build I'll feature is the Instrument Carrier, a 73 ducat build that comes with only a trench club and musical instrument. The instrument is the key piece, giving allies within 4 inches +1 dice to dash actions. The Corpse Guard is the only model that can be reasonably given the instrument, since nothing outside of the elite category in Black Grail can take it. This build serves as a bare bones force accelerator that speeds up allies, which is very welcome in the faction. You can substitute the club for a shield and add gas grenades, and even potentially some standard armor, to lean back into the bodyguard role, making him a dedicated hit taker and movement buffer. The Grail Thrall is our next focus, costing only 25 ducats, having a pathetic 5-inch movement stat with -1 dice to melee and no inbuilt armor. Like other Grail models, they have Negate Gas and Fear built in. They have Undead Fortitude, making them much more durable than any other faction's foot soldier model, which when combined with Fear can make them very good at tying up enemy models. Overwhelming Horde allows them to attack unarmed as if equipped with a trench club, but also grants them +1 dice to melee attacks for each other friendly thrall within 3 inches. They are cheap, slow, chaff foot soldiers that are the tankiest things in their price bracket. Their Overwhelming Horde ability encourages them to be ran in groups of 2 or 3, but as always be careful of blast effects. Their playstyle is to contest mid-ground objectives and to tie up enemy threats sacrificially. Due to their slow movement, they benefit greatly from the presence of an instrument carrier. If you're running a lot of thralls, an instrument is basically mandatory. With no build to speak of, we move to the Fly Thrall, which is simply an alternative version of the Grail Thrall. It is also 25 ducats but has 6 inches of flying movement speed. In exchange for this speed, they lose Undead Fortitude. It still has Overwhelming Horde, Negate Gas, and Fear. Giving up durability for speed, it is somewhat fast and very squishy. As they also cannot take any battle kit, the lack of Undead Fortitude is very felt. Access to flight for only 25 ducats is nice, and does open up some good movement opportunities your opponent may not expect, helping them close distances while staying out of sight. Using them right means moving them up to objectives as necessary, but focusing on reaching and tying up delicate backline targets in the enemy warband. It is well worth the trade to sacrifice a Thrall in order to prevent an enemy from using a strong weapon on a more appropriate target. Next on the roster is the Hound of the Black Grail. 55 ducats for a swift 8 inches movement stat with +1 dice in melee, negate gas, and fear. Again, it cannot take any battle kit, but can attack unarmed thanks to teeth and claws. It can be given the upgrade Infested Carcasses to get the infection marker keyword on its attacks for 5 ducats. With the ability Frightening Speed, it gains +1 dice to dash actions, which when combined with the 8-inch movement makes it incredibly consistent at crossing the board. Undead Fortitude is also on this model, giving it some durability despite having no armor. Disease Carrier means that if an enemy model is activated while within 1 inch of a Hound of the Black Grail, that model gains an infection marker. This essentially guarantees that if you send the Hound against an enemy, it will end up with at least 1 marker, even if the Hound failed to inflict one with its attacks. The Hound is a very fast infection spreader, able to move across the battlefield and swiftly reach to contest objectives, or to cripple enemy models with infection. You can have up to 3 Hounds of the Black Grail in your list. While there isn't much to say about the builds due to them being unable to take battle kit, it is always worth paying the 5 ducats to give them Infested Carcasses. Switching from blood markers to infection markers is the most consistent way to inflict them, and combined with Disease Carrier makes for one very sick puppy. Being fast enough to catch and tie down enemy models with decently accurate attacks and infection markers is very useful, while Fear and Fortitude makes them a pain for standard models to fight. The Hounds are more expensive than Thralls, but still cheap enough to be disposable, so when they're not running objectives, they can be sent to fight high-risk targets to give them at least 1 marker before being taken down. And an arguably even faster model, the Herald of Beelzebub. 50 ducats gets you a whopping 10 inches of flying movement with +0 dice to melee and range. As usual, it comes with Negate Gas and Fear, but also with Skirmisher. This ability means that when the model with Skirmisher is declared the target of a charge, you may move them 1d3 inches in any direction, as long as it doesn't end the move within 1 inch of an enemy model. To roll a d3, you just roll a d6, half it, and round up. The Herald's kit is limited to ranged weapons, the Compound Eyes helmet, and a single Grail devotee. It has the ability Infected Proboscis, which enables unarmed attacks and causes infection markers. Additionally, when it does cause one of those markers, it can remove a blood marker from itself. Last of all, Maddening Buzz is an upgrade the Herald can take for 10 ducats. This means that success rolls for enemy models within 8 inches of the Herald become risky. This ability is not bad, but is definitely a luxury upgrade rather than an instant buy. The Herald has the best movement profile in the entire game, with the lack of bonus to dash being the only limiter. Even still, it can very effectively play the objectives, or flank and fire on key targets. The Herald does however lack Undead Fortitude and cannot take armor, leaving them very delicate, especially for their price. You can take up to 4 in a list at most. For their builds, the first is the mid-range, costing 75 ducats, equipping with the Infested Rifle and Compound Eyes helmet. The Infested Rifle has 18 inches of range, armor piercing, and bayonet lug. Armor piercing reduces the target's armor profile from armor or shields by 1. This greatly improves performance against tanky opponents. With the Herald's movement allowing for fast flight, it can position well to achieve high ground bonuses very easily, further improving accuracy, even at long range. The Assault build is 70 ducats and takes the Putrid Shotgun. This leans into the fact the Herald can use high speed to get into range and inflict infection in early rounds. If you feel confident, you can pull off an assault combo where necessary or opportune. Look out for diving charge opportunities, as these can grant additional bonuses to the somewhat mid-melee the Herald is capable of. You're unlikely to need the Compound Eyes helmet on this build, as the shotgun grants +1 dice to ranged attacks and ignores the long range penalty. If you have the extra ducats to spare, this build can get in close very quickly, so Maddening Buzz can be worth picking up. Finally for the Black Grail roster, the Amalgam. An eye-watering 140 ducats base cost, it has 6 inches movement and no bonuses or negatives to its attacks. It comes with Negate Gas, Fear, Strong and Tough, and also has the ability Corpulent. Corpulent is a stronger version of Undead Fortitude, offering -2 dice to incoming or injury rolls instead of the usual -1. The Amalgam is definitely an interesting beast. It has 6 arms as an ability/feature to its battle kit restrictions, and I'll explain how that works here. The Amalgam ignores offhand penalties and can have up to 6 ranged and or melee weapons. It can treat 2 two-handed weapons as one-handed, and it can take further two-handed melee weapons, but these take up 2 hands as normal. For example, it could have 2 great swords, taking up only 2 hands total, but then if it wanted to have 2 further great hammers, it would take up the remaining 4 hands. It cannot have the same weapon more than twice, so unfortunately no triple flamethrower or 6 pistol builds, and it cannot take grenades. It can take 1 trench shield in place of one of its one-handed weapons, but does not benefit from the shield combo rule. Aside from this, it cannot have any other battle kit, so no armor or helmets. Additionally, it has the ability Trample, meaning it can take an extra melee attack against an enemy model that is down. This attack can't be made with a weapon, but gains the Ignore Armor keyword. Unstoppable means that enemy models on a base size of 32mm or less are not allowed to make melee attacks against the Amalgam when it retreats within 1 inch of them, and the Amalgam can still move or charge normally if only in contact with models of 32mm or less base size. Essentially, this means it cannot be tied up in melee except by larger models. The Amalgam is ultimately an expensive, swingy monster. Corpulent means the Amalgam has decent survivability, but this is offset by limited armor options. Its low accuracy makes it unreliable in most circumstances, with each shot being close to a 50-50. The Amalgam is undeniably fun to field, but is unfortunately not a go-to centerpiece like a Warwolf or Shrine Anchorite. Amalgam builds are an interesting subject, but there are a couple of choices that can work decently. The first is the Whirlwind melee build, 174 ducats. You take 2 trench clubs, 2 swords, a great hammer and a trench shield. The sword is a one-handed weapon with critical, while the trench club is your standard one-handed melee enabler. The trench shield acts as the only possible source of armor for the Amalgam, granting -1 armor to get as much value as possible out of Corpulent. You should save the great hammer for the last attack, potentially cashing in on blood markers or down results. Alternatively, pray for a down result at the very end of the swings and use the blood markers on trample if you manage to hit it. The alternative is the Corruption Belcher, 216 ducats. This build features 2 Corruption Belchers, a pistol and a trench shield. The Corruption Belcher is an 8-inch range, 2-handed flamethrower weapon that ignores armor and has the gas keyword. Flamethrowers hit automatically, going straight to the injury roll. The pistol is a 12-inch range weapon that can also be used in melee. This build focuses on counteracting low accuracy by using auto-hit weaponry, allowing blood markers to be stacked up quickly using the gas keyword. Fire the pistol first to try to inflict a marker, then use both belchers. If you have 3 markers by the time you use the second belcher, you can cash them in to roll with +3 injury dice while ignoring armor. This has a solid chance to kill most targets. The Unstoppable ability is useful for this build, as it helps it avoid getting tied up by melee threats and keeps the belchers firing. Now we come to our lists, starting with the 700 Ducat setup. In the elite slots we field a fully kitted out Lord of Tumours, a Plague Knight Almoner, and a Musician Corpse Gunner. For our troops we have a Herald of Beelzebub Shotgunner, a Hound of the Black Grail, and 2 Grail Thralls. We use the Lord of Tumours as our centerpiece, investing early in his expensive setup. Not visible in the screenshot is that he also has reinforced armor and a Black Grail shield. The Plague Knight is placed in our lists from the start to get XP rolling in the campaign, also given reinforced armor with a trench shield. The Corpse Guard with instrument will help our soldiers cross the board much faster, and as an elite can gain XP and roll on the wildcard table to gain economy upgrades. Our troop selection is thin, taking 2 speedy models to set up infection on key targets before the damage-dealing Lord of Tumours and Knight finish them off. In the meantime, the Thralls serve a lesser purpose: screening to prevent charges on key targets and soaking shots. Don't expect too much out of them and play them as sacrificial pawns. You should play the board with this list, meaning to be very aware of line of sight blocking terrain. We have no long range weapons, so we need to survive long enough to get in their faces. The Lord of Tumours will be your key piece in this list, so do everything you can to not take initial charges from threats like Warwolves or Anchorites. You need your Lord to be the one who charges, to give yourself the best chance of striking first and winning the Kaiju battle. Going up to 800 ducats and 6 glory, we make a few upgrades to our list. We add additional Grail devotees to the Lord and Plague Knight, making them even deadlier melee threats. This eats up 4 glory, and there isn't much we can spend 2 more on. For the sake of using them, we take a Field Shrine, which helps with morale when games are very bloody. Keeping morale high and the enemies low is certainly part of the Grail playstyle. Expanding the roster, we've added a Hound and a Thrall. The Hounds are too good to pass up, and we run both with infested carcasses. This generates great value as they spread infection easily. We spend leftover ducats on another Thrall. If we run the 3 of them together, they can represent a fair threat with +2 melee dice thanks to Overwhelming Horde. As for miscellaneous upgrades, we take standard armor on the Corpse Guard now, improving his survivability as a utility piece. This could alternatively be spent on upgrading the Trench Shield on the Plague Knight to a Black Grail shield, but this choice depends on matchups. Both options are valid. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much as well to my member supporters, Jack Pembroke, Garrett Wilson, Christian Westerland, Andrew Olsen, Kitty Cool Guy, and Jonathan Cameron. Your support means so much. Also, a big thanks to my Lieutenant tier patron, Xavier Romero. I offer personal amateur coaching on my Patreon at this tier, so check it out if you're interested. Anyway, if you enjoyed, like and share the video, leave a comment telling me what you want to see next, subscribe if you want to stick around, and become a channel member or patron if you want to honour me with that support. In return, you'll get your name in the credits, and soon get to vote on what faction or sub-faction gets covered next. We also now have an official affiliate link for Element Games, where you can get plastic Trench Crusade models and wargaming and hobby supplies at discount prices. This has been Trench Tactics, I'll see you around.